Fisherman's Post. More fish, more often.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast series. This episode is titled Topwaters for Reds in Skinny Water, and I'm going to be talking to Captain Daniel Griffee of On Deck Fishing Charters out of the Moorhead City area. We will be covering such areas as gear, topwater selection. We're going to be talking about evaluating locations and tides, boat positioning, and setup. A lot to cover. My name is Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and here in our latest and greatest chapter, the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast series, where we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast and ask them to share with us their insights, their knowledge on how to catch more fish more often. And in this endeavor, I am joined every week with Billy Thorpe of Thorpe Creative. Hey, Billy, welcome to another podcast.
Hey, what's up, Gary? Good to see you, man. As always, looking forward to talking about fishing or hearing about fishing, I should say.
Right on, man. And people love topwaters. Captains love to mention topwaters, and people will want to learn about it. So I think this is going to be a popular podcast, man. I mean, I think the intrigue is there.
Yeah, man. All of our topwater episodes are typically firing off pretty heavy. So it's the most exciting bite on the water, in my opinion. But, you know, who am I? Anyway.
Look at you talking like you know, man. You did that great. I almost let that go through. Like, God, you know what you're talking about.
I just rehearsed that so many times before the episode. I'm like, I gotta sound smarter when it comes to fishing.
You're legit, man. Listen,
look at me.
You've actually been paying attention to these podcasts, man. Next step is actually throwing a line in the water.
I know. I think I'm about ready for a redfish tattoo right on my forearm.
All right.
I'll pay. Or maybe a little tramp stamp of a trout. I don't know yet. I'm undecided.
I'll definitely pay for that. I'll definitely pay for either of those.
Oh, man. Well, before we lose our sponsors, I probably should shout them out and stop talking about tramp stamps, which we got Bland Landscaping Company. We'll shout these guys out first. Bland Landscaping, super great sponsors, came on. They love the podcast, big fans of it and listeners. So you support their company in a couple ways. One, if you're looking for a career opportunity, they're always looking for great people to come work on their team. They are like-minded outdoors people. So get up early, go to work, get the job done, go home, be with your friends and family. And then also, I'm sure if you need some work done by them, reach out and see if it's in their wheelhouse and get that work dand. So,
yeah, man, it's that season where sometimes you're faced with the decision: do I get caught up in yard work or I put the boat in the water? And it seems like Bland Landscaping can make that an easy decision if you just hire them to take care of your yard.
Yeah. So go check out their website, blandlandscapingco.com or company.com. And next up, we got Marine Warehouse Center. I'm going to play a little message from them. I'll be right back.
Marine Warehouse, we have everything. We have new boats, we have parts, we have accessories, new trailers, we have a complete service department with highly trained technicians. Anything you need to get out on the water, we have it.
At Marine Warehouse Center, as we've grown over the last few years, now have a large selection of marine supplies from start to finish for all your boating needs.
What I love about this region is to be able to get out on the water, and also we love to be able to get you out on the water.
The best part of working at Marine Warehouse is being able to get involved with the customers and share a love for the water.
All right. There we go, man.
They're living it, man. They're living it right now, man. But lots happening at Marine Warehouse Center, whether it's, cleaning boats up, cleaning them up for the water, selling new boats, parts, all of it, man. It's a hustle bustle place because everyone wants to be on the water right now, including me.
Yeah, man. I just got a phone call actually from my neighbor yesterday, a FaceTime at the time that we were recording this, and he got a new motor, got a John boat, bought a motor at Marine Warehouse. And I was like, did you tell him that we sent you over there? He's like, I forgot. I'm like, don't worry. I'll tell him.
All right.
So
good.
Marine Warehouse, that guy bought that motor from you. I'm not going to say his name or what he bought, but you know who he is.
Oh, that's good.
We did that.
Yeah, my buddy bought a center console. It was like 21 foot. I want credit for that. I don't want to say his name, but he bought a 21 console, center console.
This guy that listens to our podcast, he bought a boat too. Okay. Anyway, the last person.
This joke from Terrell this week, like, if you defend this, then I know you're sucking up to him for some reason, because This can't be considered a good joke, even by you, who's a friendlier audience.
All
Are
right.
you ready for Terrell's joke? Not mine, Terrell's.
Please be good. Please be good. I'm ready.
It's not. Where did Bugs Bunny decide to park his boat?
I don't know.
It's that bad.
I'm going to let you say it because
At the What's Up, Doc?
okay, that was it. That was a better place than I thought it was going. I thought it was going to be something about a hole or something. I was
Oh
like,
my God.
This is getting weird.
Clean it up. Clean it up.
I'm
What's
going to
up,
clean
Doc?
it up. I'm going to clean it up. What's up, Doc? That's a pretty good one, Terrell. All right. Not
You're
the
sucking
best.
up. He's not going to give you a
Not the
boat.
best.
I'm going to tell Terrell that
Fine.
if he gives you a boat, the sponsorship's over.
Look, if we could sell like 10 boats by the end of this episode, maybe they would give me a boat.
Maybe.
So I need 10 of you to go buy a boat right now. Billy Thorpe here with Marine Warehouse Center. We got boats. All right. Anyway, I want to show you a fish picture before I lose any more listeners. All right. We got Hamilton Vaughn from Pamlico with a 25-inch redfish caught using a cut mullet on a bottom rig in the Pamlico River. It's a good looking fish there. Good job, Hamilton.
Pretty background too, man. That looks like a place I want to be.
I know. I was like, what phone did they take that with, or camera? It's a good one. I'm surprised. You know what? You know how I know he wasn't fishing with the captain? Because he would have been laying in the bottom of the boat, holding the fish up like this.
Not letting anyone see anything in the background.
Yeah. People are screen capturing this right now. Like, where's that at?
They might be. They might be. Oh, man. Hey, look, I also at this point remind people that we are well underway with our weekly fishing reports and forecasts. It is a membership-driven service that we're providing behind a paid wall. But if you've thought to yourself, man, I wish I knew more often what was happening, weekly fishing reports and forecasts delivered via fishermanspost.com video and audio format. Just go to fishermanspost.com and click on member content.
Yeah, it's so good that even Gary Hurley uses the information on his own boat and catches fish.
That's true. That's
so
fact.
Yeah, that was a fact. So yeah, testimony right there. First testimony came from you. All right, Gary, I'll let you guys talk about fishing. I'll shut up with bad jokes now. I'm going to be with Terrell if I don't behave.
Yeah, I'm going to talk Topwaters with Daniel Griffee. But Billy's best takeaway is how we are going to end this episode like we end every episode. So some insight on Topwaters, Billy's best takeaway. You got it?
I'll be ready for it.
All right, that's your assignment. So now it is my pleasure to introduce to the show Captain Daniel Griffee, on deck fishing charters out of the Morehead City area. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be on here.
Yeah, man, appreciate you talking to us. Love the topic you picked out. Like I said, I believe it's going to be a popular one. A lot of interest in topwaters for redfish and skinny water. But before we let you get to the main event of talking about topwaters and skinny water, as tradition goes, there are 2 questions for you to answer. You tell me you're ready. I give you question 1.
I'm ready.
Question number 1. Why should we listen to anything you have to say about a redfish or a topwater? Why?
Well, I moved down here to the coast in the fall of 2005 after I graduated college. And I was an inshore fisherman, bass fisherman, growing back up in the mountains. And when I caught my first redfish, I was hooked. And it's basically saltwater bass fishing is what I tell people. It's bass fishing on steroids. But I've been doing it since 2005, 17, 18 years, chasing them. And it's like a drug to me. So I've caught them from Newbern to Swansboro, all the way out to Cape Lookout, all over, every way you can think of, and is a passion. So I've caught plenty of them, and I learn something every day. Even though I've done it a long time, I learn something every time I'm out there on the water, and just put it in my library for next time I go out.
That is a passable answer. You are moved on to question number 2. And I played on your name on deck. I know you have an athletic background when you're not on the water. So here is your non-fish. I might have a couple for you. Here's your first non-fishing related question. What dumb professional sport has fields that aren't consistent? One field in one city may have different dimensions from another field in another city. What dumb sport is that?
That would be baseball.
See how I set you up with dumb? See how I forced you to do that?
Yeah.
All right, question number 2. What dumb sport has 2 leagues with a different rule in one league than the other league?
That would be baseball.
Yeah, designated hitter. That would be
But
dumb
they changed
baseball
that
again.
this year. They changed
Did they?
that this year. Yeah, the NL and the AL both have designated hitters because they hate watching pitchers hit.
Damn it. My question was dated. All right. That's all right. Let's move on. People want us to move on. In your talking points, I think you were going to talk about gear first. So I guess we're talking about gear, and then we'll actually move into topwater selection. Is that right?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, man. What you got?
So for me, I like to throw about a 3-inch topwater lure. Everybody's got their favorites. Mine are a Hedon Super Spook Junior, and I've used every color combination you can think of. And now I've just got to the point where I strictly get 2 or 3 colors. So I would tell people to limit the number of colors you get. Reds are not near as finicky as trout are when it comes to color selection. And I like a chartreuse. You can use it in stained water, dirty water, clear water. It doesn't really matter. But if I didn't have chartreuse, I would use a gold and black back style topwater. The biggest thing about the topwater is I like to be able to throw it, and down here you're always in the wind. So you have to be able to throw something that won't helicopter on you, so you can get the distance that you need. And the Spook doesn't do that. I used to use a lot of the Rapala skitter walks, but they would, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about when I say helicopter. Instead of going like a football, they kind of propeller sideways, and it loses your casting distance. But anything 3 inches is what I typically like to use. I know fish eat big baits, but every time I throw on the huge topwaters for redfish, not bull reds, but just, slot reds, they like a smaller profile bait. I also think the noise of which your bait makes matters. Where if you're fishing in calm water, you want what I'll call badonkadonks have a low pitch and a high pitch version. I think MirrOlure topwaters do too. So if you're in like a calm, very calm water, I like a low pitch that has like that deep thump, ball bearing going back and forth in it. And if I'm in a little more wavy water or higher wind area, I like a high pitch. Kind of makes it sound like a school of bait, is what I've been told. Sounds like in the water when they shift from one side to the other as they're getting chased. So that's kind of my go-tos on the topwaters. And like I said, I've messed around with the sizes and the sounds, but from the constant progression, I've seen that the size profile matters and the noise that it makes matters.
So I got a question, I guess, to follow up on that. And I've wondered about this, and you mentioned already like low pitch and high pitch. So the high pitch works better in the wind because it sounds like bait, but is the low pitch in less wind, isn't that supposed to sound like bait too? Or I don't understand the theory.
So what I think from what I've seen, I think the low pitch is kind of like if you have calm situations, you hear everything. So the fish can hear everything. And that low thump would be kind of like a drum, and that aggravates them. It ain't so much like it's making it sound like it's a school of bait at that point. It's just something that's really aggravating to them, and it catches their attention. I tell people the same thing with a popping cork. If you're not popping it and hear the noise, you're doing it wrong. And it's not. I've heard things. It's supposed to sound like shrimp clicking through the water. Well, I've never heard a shrimp click in the water. But I do know that if somebody's out and they shoot a gun or somebody claps their hands, you're going to turn and look. And this is the same principle when it comes to reds. You make that thump and you make that noise, and that fish turns to see where that noise came from and wants to investigate what it was. And then, of course, when they see the action and the movement and they can't get that noise out of their head, I think the low tendency is what it drives them crazy. It ain't the fact that they're chasing bait. Whereas I think in the higher pitched version, when you have the wind, now the fish are competing with the sounds of the wind, the sounds of the waves crashing, the boats, whatever else is around you. So you want something that's going to be a little higher pitch, that's going to break through that water and go a longer distance. So that then it might sound like fish are trying to move away from something. So I think one is based on bait, and the other one is just based on trying to aggravate the mess out of them to make them hit it.
And that's a great explanation. I love. So the low pitch might be more the drumming of another drum, and the high pitch is just more, doesn't have to mock that, but it just has to compete with other noise. Okay.
Yep.
And then, I mean, you gave a good explanation, but again, I just know my crowd likes specifics. So if we're wrapping up our sort of topwater selection, you know, if you have 4 topwaters that you're allowed to go out in, and I mean, or maybe 2 for low wind, 2 for higher wind, what are they? What are the brands and what are the colors? I get that it's 3-inch, but I'm just going to force you around to circle back to that.
My go, if you gave me only one topwater, it's going to be a Hedon Super Spook Junior in chartreuse. That's my number one.
Is that low or high pitch?
They are all the same. They're all low pitch. There's no variation in those. Now you can get other spooks, like they make big spooks and they make 1 knockers and all that stuff. The Super Spook Junior is my go-to. I'm sponsored by Bomber Lures. I've tried them all. They're in the same family as Hedon, and I've used so many different variations of them that's the one that I would go to. In fact, if you look in my box, I've probably got 25 of those and 3 of some other color.
Right on.
Because I don't want to lose those. But if I had a second one, it would be the Bomber Badonkadonk in a high pitch. That way I have a low pitch in the spook and a high pitch in the Badonkadonk.
And the color of the Badonkadonk would be the gold black?
Gold black. I have seen years, and this happens, where like one year, about 6 years ago, all I could get them to hit the most was a mullet color. So I carry some of those too. But if you give me 2 topwaters, it's going to be the Hedon Saltwater, Super Spook Junior in chartreuse, and the gold and black back.
All right. So what about gear? What about rod reel, line, and leader selection? What about what's going to sort of make this whole thing work?
Yeah, I have a lot of discussions on this with people. And I think people get too consumed with the strength of their braid, the line test. And when you're doing reds, fishing for reds, and you're fishing skinny water, you have to be able to cast a long ways because especially when you can see them, you can't get on top of them because then you spook them. So I love to throw a 10-pound Fins wind tamer. I'm sponsored by Fins. I've been with them since 2009. I've used Power Pro and J Braid and just Berkeley Fireline, but Fins is the one that you can throw it every day and it doesn't really start to fade and separate and fan out like some of the others do. I have never broke a fish off due to the 10-pound strength, but I know that if you have 20 or 15, I can outthrow you by 25 yards. And that could be the difference in catching a fish. So 10-pound Fins wind tamer. I like the green. I don't like high vis yellow for inshore or anything like that. And again, I've used every color that they make, and that green is what I go with. I like a 20 to 25 pound leader, and I think it depends on the time of year. Like this time of year, I'll use a 20-pound leader when we get deeper into the summer and the fall, when the fish are heavy and I'm really concentrating around structure. I'll bump it up to a 25-pound leader, but nothing. I've never needed anything more than that, but I wouldn't go less. And a 7-foot medium heavy action rod is what I use. I'm not the type that likes to watch my rod bend. I want to, when I set the hook, I want the rod to do its job and set the hook in the fish, and then the rod wears the fish out. I'm not the type that wants to battle them and hope that I don't lose them. So I'll use a medium heavy action rod, 7 foot long, and a 2,500 Daiwa BG reel is what I go to. All
right. So once again, I got some follow-ups. As far as leader length, what do you like for length of leader?
Depending on the obviously how clear your water is. If it's super clear, I like to use about maybe 1.5 feet a leader. Anything, I mean, I've used it as far as like 6 inches, but a foot is a minimum, and then 1.5 feet depending on the clarity of the water. Around here in Newport River, where North River, it's real muddy. Neuse River is, it looks like sweet tea. So I'm not in the clear water as much as I am the stained water. So 1 foot to 1.5 feet, 12 inches, 18 inches of leader is fine. I don't reel my lure up so tight that if my uni to uni knot is touching my rod tip and my lure is like halfway down my rod, it's too long. That's kind of how I judge it. You don't reel your lure up to the rod tip and you don't have it hanging. I hate when somebody reels their line and their leader through their eyes, because every time you throw it out, it hits those eyes. And you can use an FG knot or the smallest knot made. It's still going to hit those eyes, and those eyes are going to bust eventually. And that could break off a fish too.
Well, man, that's a great answer. And you actually already hit on one of my next questions. And it is, I have, viewers and listeners who email in and say, hey, will you ask people more questions about knots? So I was going to ask, leader to braid. And it sounds like uni to uni is your go-to, since you already mentioned that unprompted. But what about the knot of tying the top water to the leader? Is that a loop knot, or is that something that cinches down?
That's another thing too. And when I've used all the knots you can think of. I used to use a loop knot, and when I started guiding 3 years ago, you ain't got time sometimes to tie loop knots for 3 or 4 different people. And I just started tying I tie an improved clinch knot. I tie 2 of them. I tie one improved clinch knot to the lure, and I tie another one on top of that. I started that when I was a little kid. I know there's knots you can tie that never break, but when I was a little kid using a little push button Zebco 202, sometimes that knot would slip out, and so I just started tying 2 improved clinch knots on top of each other, and that's what I always do. I haven't seen a fish ever pull up to the lure and look up and say, hey, it's not moving good enough for me, I'm not going to eat this. They are not getting that close. This is a type of bite that they're agitated and they're going to eat. It's not they're sitting there trying to figure out what type of knot it is, what color the lure is, what size hooks you got. They're there to mash that bait. So I want something that's going to be tight to the lure. I have seen loop knots fail, because sometimes that the paint on the lure can chip, and the hook of your eye can get some rust on it, and that every time it slides in and out, left and right of your lure, it's pretty much sawing your leader. So I like it. I like it tight to the lure.
Okay, man. So I love the next topic, like evaluating locations, and I know you sort of had tides tethered in there. So
yeah,
man, people are always curious about the where. And of course, we have people in the Moorhead area that are going to be watching and listening, but we have plenty of people elsewhere that are hoping you're going to give us some insight that they can apply to their backyard, not just to the Moorhead backyard.
Yeah. And I tell people too, this is what I do. This is my game plan, my thought processes, and what I've experienced. So the badonkadonk or the spook might not work for you. Use what you're comfortable with. But down here, we have both a sand bottom and a mud bottom. So towards the inlet, towards the haystacks, towards middle marsh area out to Cape Lookout, it's all sand. And typically when the tide's coming in, I like to fish sandy bottom. And again, this depends on the winds, depends on the boat activity. If it's a Saturday, like 12 o'clock, and I'm trying to fish incoming tide on a sandy bottom, but that's over there near middle marsh where everybody's going to shack and partying, it's probably going to be a little wavy, mess around with boats. So, you got all these other elements that affect that. But if it's a normal day, good day to go fishing, incoming tide, I like to fish sandy bottoms. And the reason is because the water is cleaner when it comes in. It's not as murked up and muddy. And I can see the fish. The fish can see your bait better. Even if it is a little murky, that incoming tide is clean, where if you go into the river system, you're bringing up straight mud, and it's almost, chocolate milk looking sometimes. And I just think that affects the way the fish bite, because they can't really see what they're eating. And you're throwing a topwater lure, and you can put scents on it, but again, they're not sitting there sniffing it. They're reacting to it and mashing it off a reaction. So incoming tide, I fish sandy bottoms. A falling tide, that's when I move into the river systems, because that tide, as it comes in and fills up, it's going through the grass. Well, I tell my clients this too, is that when the redfish, they are meals for sharks and dolphins. So they're going to be tight to structure, whether it's an oyster rock, whether it's a marsh bank, some little cut. And as that tide comes in, if they stay there, they're going to be easier prey for a dolphin or shark. So they move into the grass. And that's where, at high tide, they'll get way back up in there. I've seen them in inches of water, belly crawling. As that tide turns, they have to come out. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck. And this, naturally, they run out and they run right to the edges. And they come out as the tide comes, what allows them, so they won't be prey. But when that tide in the marsh, in the mud systems, it's been filtered twice. So it's been filtered going through the marsh once. And then as it comes out, it's being filtered again. And it cleans the water up, and all the nutrients and everything that's, little grass shrimps and any crabs are also getting flushed out. So that's why those fish will be in there. The water's cleaner. Brian Goodwin, Native Guide Service, he told me this a long time ago. He said, you want the water to look like sweet tea. And I believe that 100%, that when that water comes out of a mud bottom, like a Newport River or North River, it looks like sweet tea. And that's when the visibility is good for you, for the fish. And it's just been filtered twice. So it's cleaner, and fish are just like us. They like clean spaces to live and to eat and to thrive.
So you just keep giving me great explanations of why. And I love the why answer, not just telling me what to do, but giving me the why. To keep you on location, are you looking for areas, like, depending on the tide, are you liking water that's no more than 3 feet deep, no more than 2 feet deep? Are you liking any kind of structure around, whether that's a grass line, whether that's oyster rocks, like whether it's grass on the bottom in the sand? What else factors into, or what would you look at if I put you in Southport, Oak Island area, and you were on Google Earth or wherever on the water? What is it that you like?
So, well, I would look for structure. And if I'm throwing topwaters, I like to be around oyster rocks or creek mouths that's got a one way in, a one way out type deal. I like points that are really, really defined by oyster rock, not like one that they can slip around, but one that kind of a long oyster bar that may drop off. When I'm fishing reds, I'm in 3 foot or less. I hardly ever am in 8 foot of water, 5 foot of water. I'm typically, my trolling motor is going to bump the bottom, so I'm pretty shallow, even at high tide when I'm fishing for reds. Especially here. I mean, like when you fish in Neuse River, it's a little different because you got the drop offs, but I'm still fishing right up against the bank. If your lure don't hit the bank, then you need to cast it again. You're just wasted a cast because they're not hanging out in that spot, that 3 foot spot, because they're prey. So they're going to be tight to the bank. So what I'm looking for is what's holding them there. Is it the oyster rock that they're eating the mud crabs out of? Is there bait? Is there mullet around? Is there shrimp around? I like a bank that the wind is blowing with it, not making it wavy. I like it to be smooth where the wind's at my back. But I like pinch points where you can go down a bank, you can see bait swirling around it, coming around that oyster rock, and knowing they're going to be on one side or the other to throw at. And then I tell people this too. So if I'm fishing, I don't know, Southport or Bald Head Island or something like that, and I go to a spot that has a creek mouth and I float in there, if I'm on oyster rock, that's the first thing I'm going to look for, something, a oyster rock, or, if I'm in the Neuse River, I'm looking for stumps or logs or trees laying down in the water. And I find that, and then I catch a fish. The next place I go needs to have that exact same dimension, where I'm not going to go to a flat that has no oyster rock or no creek mouth. I'm going to go to another place that has a creek mouth entrance, a little pinch point, oyster bar, oyster rock with some water flowing around it. And if there was bait there, I want to see that same bait there. You want to recreate the exact same process you caught fish at every spot you go to.
Now, is that the same when you're fishing sandy bottoms out more towards Shack Middlemarsh?
Yeah. When it's amazing to me. You can go in Middlemarsh, and I've fished it for years, and there's I catch fish in 3 or 4 spots. I fished the entire thing from one end to the other, every way you can think of, every tide, and there's always fish in certain spots. And I don't know why they're not. I mean, you might catch one somewhere else, but you can go back and they don't reproduce, where there are a couple spots in there that reproduce every single year. I call them homes. That's their homes. The other ones you're just catching in transition from one spot to the other. But I'll look for that. I'll look for, give me a bay. And when I say a bay, it's not real big, but find me an entrance, and it's got some type of structure that has breakups along that. If I'm going down a long bank, I don't want it just to be straight bank. I don't want it just to be a straight sand flat. I want there to be some type of breakup, whether it be a oyster rock, a drop off, a potholes, the grass underneath. I want to see something like that, because that's what's going to hold fish. Otherwise, If there's no breakup, it's like an interstate. You just keep on going till you get to where your home is.
Well, gotcha, man. And so this might be our segue into boat positioning. You know, if we are, you know, I guess we have to go over a couple of scenarios. Like if we're targeting fish up against the grass line, up against the bank, close, like, I mean, I guess you were planning to talk about this, like how far off the boat is, what your angle of attack is. Give me some insight on boat positioning.
So, yeah, there's a couple of different scenarios. If you're like in the fall, this pops in my head when I think of the fall, and the fish are chasing the shrimp out of the grass, and you can see the shrimp jumping. You know, when they're doing that, they're typically right up against the grass, and I like to be in front of them where they're coming towards me, but not. I kind of angle myself. I always tell everybody throw it a 45-degree angle to the bank, and if you were to draw a line, the marsh grass is one line, and your boat draw a straight line from there straight across, and you make a zone almost like a football field, and you have a zone that runs down in between there. You're not going to throw outside of that zone. You want to stay inside that zone and work your lure inside that, I don't know, 5-foot area back to the boat at a 45-degree angle. That way you cover every area. But if you see those fish coming, you want them coming to you. And when they're going one direction, they're not stopping to, like, if you throw it behind them, they're not going to stop, turn around, and go back and get it. They are moving forward, eating. They're actively eating. So you have to stay in front of them. So I like to position my boat in front. If you don't see the fish, let's say the tide's falling out and the wind's blowing out of the north. So that would mean if I'm fishing the Newport River, the wind's blowing towards the ocean and the tide's going the same direction. I like to angle my boat with the wind and the tide going the same direction. So the front of my boat is going to be pointing towards where the ocean would be, if that makes sense. I do not like fishing with the water or wind in my face. One, it takes away from your casting distance. But when you got tide and it's working back to you, you can't properly work that lure. You have to work it faster than you might need to, where if my boat is sitting at an oyster rock, the tide's going out, and I'm past the oyster rock, throwing towards the ocean, bringing it back across that rock, I can always open my bail, let it float back down. I can work it slower. I can work it faster. I can really work that zone over versus like trout fishermen in the mountains. They like to be upstream and cast it where the lure comes back to them. When you do that, it gets wrapped in your trolling motor. It gets back to you too fast. There's a lot of sag in your line. So you get a topwater fish and he hits it and you've lost him because you didn't have a good hook set. You have to have the wind and your tide going the same direction.
Well, that's what, I mean, you led right into where I was going to go. So you like to drift with the tide and then cast up in front of you and bring it back.
Now, I'll tell you why this too. So if I'm going with the tide, I said this in your school when we had it here at Morehead City, and some guys were kind of questioning what I was saying. If you're on my boat and we're fishing and we're floating down going with the tide and the trolling motor's on, and you hook up with a fish, if I power pole down and I'm going against it, the boat's going to spin, and then you're walking around the boat, right? If I don't have a power pole and I keep drifting, I'm drifting past those fish, right? So now I can stop and I can stay behind, and I still got the entire area to cover, where if the water's coming to me and it's pushing me away from the fish, now I have to get back up there. I have to find that spot, and then I have to start the process back over again, where if the tide's going with me, I just stop right there. Tide's still going out, and I haven't missed any fishing grounds whatsoever.
Okay. I follow that logic. And so that's more important to you than, wind and your ability to cast far. I mean, again, I get you. Ideal conditions, tide and wind, same direction, but you much rather have the tide in your favor than wind in your favor. If between the two, you pick tide.
There's a thing.
You're not going to go against the tide just to have the wind at your back.
Right. So this is what I tell people too. Like, we run 2 half-day charters, and the morning tide is going to be different than the afternoon tide. Might be incoming. I might not be able to fish the spot that I want to fish. I might find fish on the incoming tide spot. In the afternoon, I know there's fish there, but I can't fish it because the tide's not allowing me to, or the wind's not allowing me to. So you have to have, that's where you take the situation of find your basis. Was it an oyster rock? Was it a creek mouth? Was it moving water in the same direction? And position your boat at a new spot with those same elements. You know, there's plenty of times I go fishing and I want to go fish here, but I can't because the wind and the tide are not right. So I'll go somewhere else. And I always want those two together. Kind of like if the tide, I don't know how to really explain this, but like in the ICW, we got, you got wind-driven tide from the Neuse River, and then you got the tidal-driven water from the ocean in our ICW up here. And if the tide's coming in and the wind's blowing from the north, you got water on the top going one direction and water on the bottom going the other direction. And the fish hate that. That shuts them down. They do not like that. But once that tide turns, you got the tide going out, the wind coming from the north, and it's all blowing and flowing the same direction. I'll fish that. I will not fish it that morning. I throw my hands up and say I'll go fish somewhere else where I can get the wind and the tide in my favor.
I follow. So what's your thought on how much time you invest in a spot before you say it's time to move on?
I have ADD really bad, and I cannot. If I know fish are there, I'll sit there and I'll fish it for a good 10, 20 minutes. If I also do a thing, since I'm a baseball coach, I call it the rule of three. You could tell me, you call me up and say, hey, man, I caught these fish here at this spot right here, and I'll go fish it, and it happens where I don't catch them. And you're like, man, I killed them there, and I'll go fish again. I do it 3 times. I'll fish one spot 3 times. If I don't catch a fish, I won't go back. I'll maybe on another day, but I'm not coming back there because I've fished it 3 times. I know what I'm doing. I've used different things. I'll stop. If it's a spot that I have caught fish, I will make sure I covered every position. I've covered the outside, the inside, the shore side. I've covered, all the way fishing on the bottom, top, floating stuff. And if I don't get a bite in like 5 minutes, I'm moving. Because the thing is, those fish might be there, but you can't make a fish bite. How many times you've seen a red come up to your lure and he won't eat it? Or a trout, you feel him and they just won't eat it. Something's got to change for that fish to eat. You can always come back to a spot, but I will never sit at a spot and wait for them to turn on because you'll get heartbroken. I'm going to go find those fish somewhere else that's active, and I can always come back. So about 5-10 minutes if I'm on a trolling motor. If we ain't getting no hits, I'm moving. I can't sit there.
All right. All right. Now, a question that comes up all the time talking about topwaters is how important is it to be in the morning? How important is it to be overcast? Can you do it all day long? Yeah. Like, give me your thoughts.
I had this discussion with a lot of people too. Morning is the best. Morning is I think fish are just like us. They wake up and they're hungry and they're ready to eat. Morning would be, if you're going to book a trip with me, morning is the best. Overcast. An overcast day all day is my favorite. And of course, I've had those days where it's overcast and we don't do that good. But overcast, I think, matters. But the thing down here is we're fishing 2 to 3 foot of water all the time. These fish aren't like in the Pamlico or in the Neuse where you might be fishing 10 foot of water. They're not coming from 10 foot up. So you can throw a topwater all day long. I can't tell you how many people I've had on my boat, and it'll be 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sun straight up above us, and they're like, you're throwing that? Yeah, those fish are in 1 foot, 2 foot of water. Like, it's coming right across their head. They're not having to be in real deep water where it's cooler because it's 95 degrees outside. They're in 2 foot. It's going right across their head. They'll eat it just the same way. And I can't tell you how many people catch one. They're like, man, I thought I had to put this thing up at 9 o'clock. I'll throw one all day long.
All right. I got some more questions. These are all, I'm going through my standard question bank at Topwaters. So, you're a guide, you got people on your boat of differing skill levels. So I'm guessing you have to have a conversation with them, most of them, if not all of them, about what happens when that bait gets a little bit of attention. Well, 1, to keep them from yanking, 2, like whether or not to stop, pause, whether to keep it going. Tell me how you coach people on your boat.
We had this happen the other day on a trip. A guy had a topwater blow up and the fish hit it like 3 times. And he said, well, what do I do? And I just keep working it. You keep working it. He's interested. He's hit it 3 times. Eventually he's going to get it. If you don't get him, you just throw it back out. He was that interested. He'll probably hit it again. And in fact, the guy's girlfriend stole it from him on a spoon. I tell people, one is there's no bass set. There's no bass hook sets because you'll pull it out. The redfish's mouth is underneath. It's like a carp. It's not a coming up on top and opening his mouth like a largemouth bass. So you see the hit and you just pull tight. You pull tight. You reel that slack. You pull tight, and then you keep your rod. I learned this from Randy Clark. You keep your rod high to the sky, as high as you can point it, and that directs the fish over the oyster rocks. If you point that thing to the ground, he's going to take you down. He's going to break your heart and cut you off on an oyster rock or some type of structure that you're fishing around. So that's pretty much what I'm telling him. High to the sky, keep it high, keep it tight. When he wants to run, just sit there. Just let him run. If you need to follow him around the boat, follow him around the boat. But don't crank while he's pulling. You'll pull him out. And once he stops, that's when you keep your rod tip high, but you keep cranking.
All right. I got more questions. You in?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So we're on a school of fish. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big school. I mean, I don't know. You can take over on that element. So if I'm hooking a fish out of that school, what's the school's reaction? You know, are they curious? Are they interested? Or are they freaked?
I think it depends on the time of year. I think it depends on, are they actively feeding? If they're actively feeding, they're not scared. I mean, when they're actively feeding, and I love it when I can get clients on the boat and show them fish like eating the shrimp. And you throw anything, you could throw a Cheeto in there. It don't matter. They're going to eat it. They're not spooked. They're there for one thing, and they're there to eat. So you just keep pounding them. What you got to hope is that when you catch them, they don't disappear on you. And, you know, those schools that will sit in a certain area that you can keep your eye on is the best, because then you don't have to lose them and try and find them again. There are many times we get in a school and you catch one or two and the school just keeps moving. You know, two of their buddies are out fighting for their life and they're still eating. They're like, oh, okay, see you. They're still moving forward, eating whatever they were chasing. So we fight those fish and get them in the boat, and then we're trying to relocate that school. And hopefully it happens. Sometimes it don't. I've seen it where it's one and done. It happened last week on a charter. We got into this little bay, and the fish were, you know, we hooked one, and the guy, he pulled off. I saw 6 fish swim in front of us, and they were booking. Now, when they're like that, when they're not actively feeding, you got to hope you don't scare them. You got to hope you can get in front of them, and you got to hope they eat, because you might have one chance. And these fish were one chance fish, where we got into a bay and there was probably about 60 fish in 2 different pods. And you could see the wake, you could see the fish. They threw behind them, and then they got one good cast in, got one thump, but it was like those fish were not stopping. And the school ran around us and kept on going. The next school came by. I mean, it was like as quick as you saw them, they were gone. And we never found them again. Sometimes them fish will circle back, and you know, I'll pull off them in the area and let them kind of calm down. They'll go right back. They're not going to go from one end of the marsh to, like in middle marsh, they're not going to go from the north end to the south end. They're going to be in that same area, because that's what's keeping them, you know, something's keeping them there, whether it's food, whether it's shelter, whatever. But if you allow it to calm down, they might come back to where you saw them, and then you repeat the process. You know, hopefully you get a good cast in, and hopefully they bite. You want those lazy schools, though. I've seen it where, you know, we're catching, you know, small fish, and over here you got a school to our left, and that's the big fish, and then up above you got another separate school, or wolf pack, you know, some people call them, of like 10, 15 fish, and you just want them to be fat and lazy and hungry and just eating. And that's the fun schools.
All right. As far as, you know, your favorite time of the year to target red drum on topwater?
My favorite time of the year would have to be September to November. And the reason is because you have all the bait. At that time of year, you got pinfish in, you got mullet in, you have shrimp in. So they got so many options to eat, and they like to you know, beef up for their winter, whether they're staying or they're going out in the ocean. And they are so aggressive. They're so aggressive, and they're big and golden. You know, especially in the backwaters we got, they might turn orange like a pumpkin. If I had another, and you gave me another option, it would be in June. For some reason, June is, I don't know if it hasn't got so hot that the water's like miserable and the air temperature is not miserable. June is a fun month to straight topwater fish because those fish came in from the ocean. They're kind of setting up in their little home areas, what I call them. And you can throw topwaters all day long. And now they're trying to load up on food. That's usually when the mullet are, have made an appearance. You start to see some shrimp, but you're trying to load up on those mullet and, get fat. I also tell people, your fish towards the inlet, you might catch a 27-inch red that's 6 pounds. And it's because the tide is constantly moving. And it's almost like them fish are eating while they're on a treadmill, is the way I explain it to people. I was like, those river fish, though, they ain't fighting the tide and the current like the ocean fish are. So those fish are sitting in their recliners eating, and they're just gorging and not burning as many calories. So you might catch a 25-inch red that weighs 7 pounds, which is what you want in a tournament.
Yeah, man. All right. I think we're getting to the end, but what would be some definite don't do this, or maybe some definite do this?
Don't have too heavy a line. You don't want to hear it, whipping through your guides. Do not go straight braid to your lure. You need the leader. Do not horse the fish. The rod does the work. The rod wears the fish down. Don't matter how big it is. You can catch a 40-incher on a 7-foot trout rod. The rod does the work and wears them out. Don't horse them to the boat. You'll pull them hooks out. And I've seen so many heartbreaks. People just for me, I feel it. Of course, I want people to catch fish, but when they hook one and that thing pulls the hooks and that lure floats up and that fish swims off, it sucks. There's no way to put it. So don't horse them. Just play them. Enjoy the fight.
So then I guess that to the final question, man, anything I haven't set you up yet to say, or any questions that you tend to feel that I just haven't thought of going through my sort of question bank? Final thoughts.
No, I think we covered a lot more than what I expected. I tell people this too, I've had a lot of people, well, where do you catch them? It ain't so much where you catch them, because they might be in one place or other. Just get out and fish. It's all trial and error. I'm not an expert. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. Like I said, I've been doing this for 18 years fishing down here, and I learn all the time. There's stuff. We caught gray trout the other day, and I saw dolphins eating them. Like, I've never seen dolphins actively eating fish people throw back, and they had to throw them on the other side of the boat because the dolphins were literally right beside the boat. So you see stuff and you learn stuff every day, but you take that and the next time you go out, you add it to your library. So just get out and fish, experiment. And when you find something that works, just repeat the process. And there's nothing wrong with venturing out, and you might come home with an L, but next time, well, maybe there's many different elements in the fishing that allows you to catch fish. And once you figure some of those out and stay consistent with it, you'll catch more fish. Booking trips, you can call me directly. You can go through Chasin Tails Outdoors. I run out of Chasin Tails. Great guys there. Matt Lamb does a great job with that. Tackle Shop's the best on the beach. Got all the bait and lures you need, and that's it.
Well, Daniel Griffee, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation about redfish and topwaters. And again, that is Captain Daniel Griffee, On Deck Fishing Charters, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, this was a good time.
I appreciate it.
Billy, do you agree? Was this a good time? Did he deliver?
Yeah, more than delivered. Yeah, I was sitting there like, I don't know what my best takeaway is going to be. So I'm still thinking about it. But I do have a funny takeaway that I think no one probably caught, because no one listens as tentatively as I do.
Oh, okay.
And that is, don't take your girlfriend fishing. That's right. I don't know if you heard it. He whipped it right in there. Like he said, what his clients was on the boat. The guy, he's threw back out, but his girlfriend caught the fish. I'm like, that's why you don't take your girlfriend fishing. Jesus. I was heartbroken for that guy. You poor sap. You're sitting there trying to catch a fish on top water, and your
pulled it
girl
away
comes
from
in.
him with a spoon. I took that
With a
away from him.
spoon.
It's like she came in with a spoon when he was trying to finesse the top water, man. And again, you know, a lot of these guys use top waters for more search baits, and then if you get something and they're just not committing, you throw something else in. But I appreciate your, you know, anti-girlfriend angle as well, man. I mean, anti-female.
I'm not anti. Hold on a second.
Right. Strike that from the record. I would like that stricken from the podcast, please.
You're gonna get me in trouble. My wife's never watching the
You're
show,
not
so it
gonna watch
doesn't matter.
this. You're safe.
Neither is yours.
I'm safe.
Right? Yeah. Like there's females who watch our show, I'm sure. I'm sure there is. Let us know in the comments so we can honor you appropriately, Gary. Jeez, oh Pete. Gonna get us in trouble. Anyway, yeah, I'm still not taking you fishing though. I mean, my wife neither. She'll outfish me all day, still in fish.
Yeah, because she'll listen to the captain. That's the standard reply, is that on charter trips, the females listen way better than the males, and consequently, the females do better results-wise than the males who think they already know.
Dude, anytime I've been on a boat where Leslie, your wife, is there with you, she's smoking it, and you're not. Like she's beating you every time. She listens. Yeah. So anyway, too much fun, man. Well, and one thing I did want to ask a question, and maybe you could give me the answer, or maybe I ask some other. I mean, but was he saying the wind and the tide going in the same direction is good, but if they're kind of opposite of each other, then that's not good?
Yes, that is what he was saying.
All right, cool. So that was technically my best takeaway, but I wasn't sure I heard it exactly right, so I went with the girlfriend one. It was safer. Well, kind of. Sort of.
Until I butchered it and turned it into something else.
Yeah, now you call me a woman hater.
Oh, misogynist. Billy, misogynist.
I'm gonna get canceled, dude. Just my part of the show is gonna get canceled. I'm only in here for a couple minutes of show now. Now it's over for me.
I've been wanting to get you back for all those "I don't catch fish on my boat" comments. I've been waiting for this moment.
Yeah, but that's not a lie. All right, Gary, we better get out of here before we dig this hole any deeper. And we appreciate our sponsors. Yeah, our sponsors. Appreciate Marine Warehouse Center for having our back, even through all this stuff that Gary's slandering me with, and also Bland Landscaping Company, which they are looking for men and women to come work for them. And so go check those guys out. All right, Gary, we'll see you in the next episode, man.
Thank you so much.
Fisherman.